one farmer said to me lately, he says, Noel, he says, what scheme am I in? We seem to have...
I can well believe it, yeah.
We seem to have so much engagement with you and, your colleagues. Like, what are we in?
Hello and welcome to AgriFocus. Today in studio, I'm joined by President of the Agricultural Consultants Association, the ACA, Noel Feeney. The ACA represents private agricultural consultants and advisors in Ireland. It has more than 160 member offices, employing about 280 agricultural and environmental staff, and a few hundred more working in admin or the technical end of things. They provide advice and support to about 55,000 farmers across the country. And one of the key issues advisors help farmers with is slurry management in the context of nitrates regulations. Now, as we know, the closed period for slurry spreading ended last Saturday for farmers in Zone A, which is mostly counties in the southeast and east. But there are many more issues in relation to slurry that farmers have to deal with, along with the help of their advisors, and they need to work out the details. Noel Feeney, thank you for joining us. The first thing I'm going to ask you, Noel, is what feedback are you getting from your member consultants about the level of pressure on their clients to meet slurry storage or export requirements?
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here, and Happy New Year to your listeners. Look, I suppose the month of January, it's an important month for farmers to be thinking about, management of their slurry and looking at their slurry storage situation. And look, as we all know, we've had a terrible lead in from, you could say, last July, grounds being continually saturated with high rainfall. So again, all those situations lead into thinking about slurry in the month of January. And as you correctly said, Zone A opened up last Saturday. Zone B tomorrow, that would be the Roscommons, the Galways, the Clares, etc. And then Zone C then will be the 1st of February there in the more northern counties. So again, look, it's very important because, as we're all aware at this stage, there are issues there with water quality in Ireland. And we've had the European Commissioner over in Ireland last November, and all the talk that time was the loss of our derogation from 250 to 220 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, which in fairness will, put a lot of dairy farmers under pressure that's losing that number, that derogation. But look, at the bottom line is here, and as the Commissioner said himself, it's in Ireland's hands to maintain our 220 kg of nitrogen per hectare. So again, this is the time for farmers to be thinking about what they're going to do, because it's up on it's not just dairy farmers. Dairy farmers count for about 10%. We have about 6,000 dairy farmers in derogation. There's about another 7,000 farmers out there that's exporting slurry to stay within the 170. So again, that's 10% of our farmers. So obviously, look, this involves every farmer for Ireland Incorporated. So again, look at the land. How wet is it? Are you going to be able to travel? Are you going to keep away from your open drains? Are you near water courses? Are you near lakes? Look at the land. If you don't need to put any slurry at the minute, if you're not under pressure, well, don't put out any. Because again, it's important to match the slurry with the growing season, and grass won't be actively growing until it reaches maybe 4 or 5 degrees. But again, if you're not under pressure, hold off. And but if you are under pressure, look at the land that you can put the slurry on. And again, keep your buffer zones away. For example, if you have dry drains, hedges, keep 2 meters away. If you have water courses, lakes, keep 10 meters away. And if you do happen to be near water sources for public water abstraction like reservoirs or lakes, you keep 500 meters away. So again, I would say to every farmer, look at their own situation. Look at the weather forecast. Look at the soil. Is it wet? Is it too wet to go out? And if you're able to hold off, if you have the storage capacity, just delay it a little bit longer. But look, it's up to every farmer. We're all playing a role. And, as the European Commissioner said, the maintenance of our 220 derogation is in our own hands. So again, that would be the important message to get out to farmers.
And Noel, from the advisors that you've been talking to, are they under pressure from, we'll say, let's take dairy farmers who are under pressure to find other farmers or farming enterprises that will import for them?
Yes, that is true. And that brings its own problems as well, because the Nitrate Directive, we're all operating to the Nitrate Directive. It's the law of the land, really. And there's been some subtle changes to the Nitrate Directive in the last year and a half. It has been updated in March 2022. And one of the important little updates that was there is that the nitrogen content of cactus slurry has changed from 5 kgs of nitrogen per hectare down to 2.5 kgs of nitrogen per hectare. So if you're an exporting farmer looking for a home for slurry, you have to maybe get rid of twice as amount of slurry, and the importing farmer will have to take in twice as much. But, have you got a nutrient management plan? Can you take in all that nitrogen? Can you take in all that phosphorus? Are you going to overshoot the runway regarding your nitrogen and phosphorus allowance? So again, advisors at the minute will be drawing up nutrient management plans, etc., seeing what the limits for nitrogen, what nitrogen we need to get rid of and what nitrogen farmers can take in. But look, at the basis of all good nutrient management planning is soil sampling. And look, at the issue there with soil sampling is, we have to have soil samples in for the acre scheme by the 15th of May. And laboratories, there's going to be a tight schedule. They're working on the laboratories. There's pressure there and under advisors to get the soil samples done, get them taken. You might be waiting for 4 or 5 weeks to get results and then drop a nutrient management plan. So again, there is pressure there, but look, we're working through it.
And I suppose, as you said there, you mentioned you're working on both sides of it for the farmer who obviously wants to export and the farmer who will be importing, but to make sure that they stay within their own limitations as well.
That's right, you see. And look, as I say, the whole farmers must be aware that the whole situation is tightened up. Like we are, we have targets as a country to reach by 2030 as regarding nitrogen uses and gases emissions, etc. And we're all familiar now with the fertilizer database that has come in as well. Every farmer, example, had to put in what their closing stock was by the 15th of October last year, and there's going to be farmers now in the next weeks maybe ordering 18612s and 101020s. That's all going to be recorded when they're purchasing it. That's all going to go into the mix as well. So again, the need is there for farmers to get onto their advisors, engage with them, and see what their limits are. Because look, at the end of the day, there are penalties. Penalties can be severe depending on the level that you go over your criteria by. So again, it's important that there's engagement there and continual engagement right throughout the year, because we only have a small, narrow window for taking soil samples, really and truly. That's January, February, March. And then, there's fertilizer going out and, good soil sampling, you're talking about maybe leaving 3 months in between taking a soil sample and when fertilizer is put out in the land. So again, your next window then is maybe going into the back end, maybe September, October, November, December. So again, it's important to make use of those limited times, those windows.
And what about slurry spread? And then, Noel, we've noticed a fair few slurry tanks on the roads since last Saturday morning, and they might not have exactly been in Zone A now, to be quite honest with you. So, I mean, are farmers up to speed enough on the zones? Are they up to speed enough on the deadlines? Do you think they need more education, or are they under pressure? What do you think is happening out there?
I think there's a huge need for education amongst farmers. And I always said it, that the Agricultural Consultants Association, and you mentioned it there at the onset, we have advisors right throughout the country, and we are private companies, sole traders, but we're dealing with up in 55,000-60,000 farmers in Ireland, and that's over half the farmers. And I believe we are totally being underutilised by the Department of Agriculture. For example, on water quality, we have the ACA programme. We have got no funding under that. We're dealing with all those farmers. We have no input there. And then there is, I believe, an EIP coming out on water quality very shortly. We have no input there as well. So look, at what I would be saying to politicians and what I would say to government is, here's a set of farm advisors here that's dealing with 55 to 60,000 farmers. Why isn't that resource being utilised by the country? Because obviously we have targets to meet. And that's something, as president, that I would be hugely concerned about. And, I think that has to be addressed. I think the whole advisory system in Ireland has to be addressed, because at the end of the day, it's all about farmers. And we're looking to farmers to jump these high ditches, to get to these levels that are required on the farms, from water quality to biodiversity to gaseous emissions. And look, we have a huge role to play here, and we're being underutilised.
What advice would you give? Now, you mentioned some things already. If a farmer came to you tomorrow morning in terms of maybe slurry storage, for example, what advice would you give to a farmer who asked you tomorrow about some basic tips, or how they will get around their slurry storage requirements, or what should they do first?
Well, I think it's important. It's not now. We should be looking at capacity. I think during the summer months, farmers need to plan ahead on their stock numbers, what they envisage keeping for the winter. Obviously, the same with their fodder as well. But as regards, have you got enough slurry storage? Are you overstocking? And if you are overstocking, well, obviously you're going to run into problems maybe into the month of January, February. So again, from a long distance out, farmers need to be looking at those practical situations. If they are going to increase stock numbers, they may need to look to apply for a TAMS grant to extend slurry storage facilities, and that way mean, looking for a planning permission and getting onto their advisor then to make the TAMS application. Again, is there a neighbour that may be able to take in slurry? There's a lot of farmers out there at the minute that have cut back in stock and they may have capacity. But again, that important farmer, we need to make sure that he's not going to, overshoot his run in regards to nitrogen and phosphorus. So that important farmer would need to have a nutrient management plan to let him know or her know what needs to be taken in. So there are a number of things. If different parts of the country, if ground is good, can we get some lighter animals out? Can we take pressure off the system? Is there, again, it's important that we start planning about our slurry storage facilities way out when the cattle are gone out straight away in the spring and looking forward again. So forward planning is always important here.
And Noel, we ran a story on Agriland recently about how many imports of slurry into farms were not verified yet. As you probably know yourself, it has to go through the system where the receiving herd number has to verify the import that they're taking in, and it was in the thousands. Now, is that just a backlog? Do you think that's down to advisors to help the farmers get these verified? Do you think, we've heard of cases where, some farmers have said they've got a notification that they're importing slurry and knew nothing about it. Is it a heavy workload? What do you think is contributing to that? Okay,
so we've moved away in the last year and a half to 2 years from a paper exercise of recording slurry movements to an online system. It's on the nitrogen and phosphorus system on AgFood. Now, say for example, you're exporting slurry to me. Say you're exporting, 200 cubic meters to my farm. You or your advisor will input that on the system, and then my phone then the department will send a message to my phone to say there's unverified slurry movement. So I, as a farmer, must go into the AgFood and download it and verify it, or I contact my advisor to go into the Ag system and download it and verify it. Now, one of the problems I think here that's happening is that the farmer is receiving those text messages, but also believes that his or her advisor is receiving those text messages as well, and they're not double checking. So again, if you're getting that text message, you need to contact your advisor, because the advisor does not receive that text message from the Department of Agriculture. The other situation too, I believe, is that we have a lot of piggeries out there that's exporting pig slurry to farmers. Obviously, piggeries are working under EPA licenses, and they have to record where these slurry exports are going as well. And I think there's work to be done there in the pig industry, to make sure that they are all well aware of what the requirements there are, and to notify their people that they're giving slurry to as well. So again, I think a lot of this is education. A lot of this is falling down between the two stools. That I've got the text message as a farmer. Surely my advisor is getting the text message, but that is not the case, or that won't be the case. So again, I think it's important that that everyone is alerted to the fact that there is going to be a verification of slurry required at such and such a date. Now, at the minute, that is not done on a real-time basis, but who's to say down the road that mightn't be done maybe a 7 days notification? We don't know.
In the wider context then of the nitrates regulations, which you mentioned from the offset, slurry is part of water regulations and ensuring that we have improved water quality in this country. Some banks are now apparently stress testing, farm finance, particularly we'll say maybe to dairy farmers who'd be looking for finance on the 170 kilos of nitrogen per hectare under nitrates regulations. And I suppose this is an effort by the banking sector, no more than any other sector, who are all trying to do their bit in terms of the environment, sustainability, and the financing that goes with this. How do you think, from your own consultant members and the feedback you're getting from them, how do you think farmers are dealing with this, especially when they're probably a little bit under pressure to get the finance in the first place? Maybe they have to buy extra land for to keep their stocking rate and so on.
Yeah, look, it's something new. It's something new that maybe some of our advisors have come across, and they have engaged with the banks to see what the requirements are there. And look at, if an advisor is asked to help us with part of, as to give information as part of the loan, stocking rates, for example, potential stocking rates, slurry storage capacity, farmyard manure capacity, whatever, that can be all put into into detail into part of the farm, into the farm plan, and that farm plan also can be submitted as part of the whole package as required in finance. Now, obviously, again, the banks will be made aware of that there's difference. The farmer is could be in an acre scheme, or the farmer may be in an organic scheme, which is sowing responsibility for the local environment. And also the banks will be made aware too as well in that plan that there are TAMS grants there as well. So look at it, as I said, there's various different things that we can put into that. But on an individual basis, I suppose all farms are different, but farmers or their advisors will be, I think it's a new thing that's happening, and that will become more exposed to that as time goes on.
The nitrates derogation then, Ireland is one of the rare countries that still has a derogation, Noel, albeit now at a more reduced rate than we previously had it. What do you foresee is coming down the road in the next, we'll say, 2 to 5 years? Do you think that we'll retain that derogation?
Well, look, at the minute we have our nitrate directive. And as I said to you earlier on there, that was revised in March 2022. Now, there are little changes and touches to that nitrate directive as we go along. But what I would be suggesting is that leave that nitrate directive alone as it is. This needs time to filter through the system to all farmers. And, I would expect that, with that nitrate directive and with education and with proper advice, our water quality will stabilise. Going back to the European Commissioner again, it's totally within our own hands, water quality. And as I say, that's not just the dairy sector, it's all sectors of farming. And, we have a huge, one of the things Ireland has, it has a huge and finely tuned advisory service, both public and private. And look at, as I say, let's make use of the private advisory service there. Let's finance it. Let's get education into every household, into every farm, on the responsibilities that they have towards water quality. And if that was to happen, I'm quite sure that over very quickly our water quality would stabilise. And as I say, it would be important that it is, because obviously that 220 derogation is so important, especially for our dairy industry.
With all of the schemes, obviously slurry is a big topic at the moment for all your advisors and your members in the Agricultural Consultants Association, Noel, and I'm sure they're getting plenty of queries every day now about the slurry storage and the nitrates, but there are a number of schemes, and it seems like every week there's a plethora of deadlines, coming for one scheme or another. How are advisors dealing with that at the moment? Because I'm sure they have a massive client base, every one of them. You never hear about an advisor's always up to his tonsils or her tonsils. So how are ye helping farmers educate them about the deadlines? What deadlines should they be aware of? And what things are coming up?
Well, I suppose if we look at the last 15 months, say from October 2022, where we got the terms and conditions of Acres 1, and since that, advisors have been flat out advising farmers regarding the different schemes. We've had a plethora of schemes, as you say, most of them with closing dates, very, very short windows, some of them with closing dates the same day. And, as an advisory body, private consultants, we are running our business. We're very flexible. We're not talking about 9 to 5 office hours here now the last 15 months. And look at advisors, and I'm very proud of our advisory system as regards to private consultants we've delivered for our clients. But there is a cost to that. And look at, people have serious, they had serious problems, meeting these deadlines. Health and safety. We talk about health and safety for farmers, health and safety for advisors. Advisors are out walking highlands and lowlands for acres during the depths of that last winter. Very poor ground conditions, health and safety issues there. Health and safety issues, pressure. Pressure is a huge thing. And a lot of advisors, have talked to me about pressure. They've felt pressure on themselves, and their family has felt pressure. And like, as I said, there is a cost to all these deadlines, and it's something going forward to the next cap reform. And that's only around the corner because time goes very quick, as we all know. There has to be a proper plan put in place going forward, that all these schemes are not running at the same time, that there are suitable windows of opportunities to apply for the schemes, and that we start, application for these schemes from a long distance out, and maybe leave the windows open longer. Maybe some of these schemes could be doubled up or whatever, involved in one bigger scheme. But as I say, it has been a hectic 15 months. Advisors have felt the pressure, and I suppose it's communicating that to the department. Also, we have a KT situation at the minute that has risen its head in the last week. And, the KT was a fine scheme back in 2015, 2016, where we got farmers together in a group and we discussed different things like water quality and like slurry spread and different things like that. And farm advisors facilitated the groups. And number one, it was a great social gathering, maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks. Farmers got a few pounds for attending it, and advisors got their money for facilitating the groups. In the new KT, similar terms and conditions, but now we have 8 group meetings to do versus 5, and there is one-to-one meetings. And a circular came out last week from the department stating that those one-to-one meetings, you only could do 2 per day, and they had to be done by the end of March before you could do any group meetings. This is another example of moving goalposts. This is another example of a deadline we didn't know about. This is going to overlap with BISCRIS and ECO 2024. This is going to overlap with a very, very busy soil sampling programme. So again, we are asking for some common sense here. This is putting more pressure on the advisory system. And we need a bit of common sense here to get these one-to-one meetings completed within a reasonable period of time, but not under such a short deadline and with a short notification of terms and conditions. So again, it's all about planning it out.
So it's really an onus, I suppose, on the department to look at what's feasible and what's not, because I know that a lot of complaint from advisors, from Teagasc advisors as well, from farmers themselves, is just that everything, they feel a bit shortchanged, Noel, I'll be honest with you, because they're trying to meet deadlines and get in by deadlines at 5 p.m. on such and such a date. And they're penalised if they're not in if they don't get in. And next thing, farmers went through Christmas and they hadn't a penny in their bank account from the department. It comes across as slight double standards. I'm not saying that the department is not under pressure as well. It is. But like you were saying earlier, in terms of further thinking and rearranging schemes not to all come together, clearly there wasn't a strategic overview here when they were starting rolling out schemes from the department, be it coming from Europe or whatever, because everything came at the same time. Advisors are under pressure, farmers are under pressure, department IT systems are under pressure. It's not really the way to go.
And it's not sustainable.
No.
And I think there has to be, and there must be a valuable lesson learned after the last year and a half, that this cannot continue on, and that there has to be responsibility taken by the department to look at going forward. Obviously, we will have more schemes, but we need to start planning that now, and we need to start planning that there is an advisory service here, but the end user is our farmers. And again, as I say, with all this rushing and getting in deadlines in, human error is a huge thing that raises its ugly head. Human error, if I make a very simple mistake or I omit something, there's penalties for the farmer. That's going to affect me as well. And, the whole structure and appeal system as regarding human error, force majeure, things like that, that needs to be totally reevaluated by the Department of Agriculture as well. Because we're all human beings at the end of the day, and working to these tight deadlines, clerical errors. I know, for example, that if an accountant makes a mistake or an accountant is late with a deadline with revenue, there's none of these horrendous penalties go on to their clients. So again, that whole system has to be looked at as well, and it's something that ACA will be looking at as a charter. We have a Charter of Farmers' Rights. There should be some sort of a similar charter for advisors as well. So again, I think going back to what I said earlier on, the whole advisory system in Ireland needs to be re-looked at, re-evaluated and teased out. Where are we all going for the next cap reform? Because we have time, we've learned some valuable We've learned some valuable lessons now, and I think everybody, public advisory, private advisory, the Department of Agriculture, all the interested bodies, farmers, just needs to be sit down, because this can't happen again. This was 15 months of absolutely non-stop, people under pressure, farmers under pressure, penalties, human error, clerical errors, things like that. And one farmer said to me lately, he says, Noel, what scheme am I in? We seem to have...
I can well believe it, yeah.
We seem to have so much engagement with you and, your colleagues. Like, what are we in? And we, as advisors, don't have the full IT to tell them, what money they're getting, etc. Hopefully we'll get that this year. Farmers won't know what they've really got or what schemes they're in until they get their February statement. And again, it's something else I would ask for as well, and that's a huge investment in department IT systems. Going back to our slurry and going back to nitrate derogations, like I've had horror stories from colleagues of mine that soil samples weren't up, the department weren't uploaded, they weren't received, the farmer has received letters saying they're being thrown out of derogation. Like, all the advisor has is a screenshot. The IT system is not up to scratch. So we need a revised IT system for derogation applications, the whole nitrate section. We need improved IT, BIS, CRIS and ECO, and I know that is working at the minute. Acres IT is another situation. So again, IT right throughout the Department of Agriculture, I think, needs a huge upgrade, both for Department of Agriculture themselves, advisors, and for all the end users, the farmers. So again, that is a must-to-do list as well.
Absolutely. Some very valid points there made by Noel Feeney, the President of the Agricultural Consultants Association. Thank you very much for joining us on the AgriFocus podcast today. That's all we have time for this episode of AgriFocus. Please be sure to rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also listen to them on the Agriland smartphone app or on your computer, and share it with anyone who you think might like to listen or might be interested. Until the next time, from myself, Stella Meehan, goodbye and take care.